Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, and welcome back to Joe on Joe Extreme. It's me, Joe Slepsky, your host, and I'm back this week with, I gotta be honest, guys, another home run of an episode. It is fantastic. It's the third episode of the second season. It's called A Traitor Among Us. And it just dives head first into this whole Iron Claws Clancy stuff. The Joe team is on their heels. This episode is fabulous. And I am so happy to watch this fabulous episode with a friend of the show. He's a Patreon supporter. And he's a longtime listener, and it's about time we got him on. I'm welcoming Matt Anderson from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Matt, welcome to Joe on Joe Extreme.
Thanks, Joe. Happy to be here.
Oh, man, very happy to have you on. So, Matt, you're in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is, we can't go any further without pointing out you're in the hotbed of social activity these days.
Yes, very much so. Kind of the start of.
Yeah, are you safe? Are you? I mean, what was that? What was all that like? Just so you guys know, we're recording this in mid-July, right? We're about a month out from a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests, which were centered around the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis. So,
Right.
For historical reference, that's where we're at today. So where were you at when it all went down? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was just at home really for we're all pretty much in lockdown. We've been in pretty strict kind of lockdowns for a while in Minnesota too, since like March.
Yeah.
Our governor implemented it pretty quick. So a lot of people were staying home, and around that Memorial Day time was around when things were kind of loosening up a little, and unfortunately that's when the murder happened. And there was just mostly vocal unrest for a few days, and then about Wednesday, Thursday that week's when a lot of the protests have been going on, but then we started getting the riots. Appears like people came in from out of town to almost kind of escalate them. Some bad people that really weren't, in support of actually what the protests were about, which were a positive, trying to accomplish.
I agree. Now I don't know much about Minneapolis. Are you in is it? I know obviously it's a large city, but are you in the suburbs of Minneapolis? Are you more downtown? Where are you at in relation to where a lot of the action was happening?
Yes, we're about 15 minutes from downtown. So we're in a northern suburb, just a little bit north of downtown Minneapolis. So we were, for the most part, far enough away, that nothing really outside of one of the local malls that's about 5 minutes away. There's a little bit of looting there, but the real intense riots were about 15 minutes away.
Okay.
So
that was more downtown.
Yeah, we're pretty glued to the news. Obviously, it's just sort of scary, and you're hoping for the best.
It had to be. Yeah, it had to be.
Not to make light of it, but it's sort of, once the National Guard and SWAT teams and things came in, when I was watching the news, I'm like, I feel like I'm watching Dark Knight Rises live out on my TV screen. Like, this is Bane with his group. I need Batman. And
you're not wrong, man. You're not. You're really not wrong. And I don't think I don't think that's making light of it at all. I think that's what a lot of us go through. We see those parallels, and we see them paralleled in some of the entertainment that we've been watching for decades. And sometimes the truth is worse than the fiction,
Right.
There wasn't a guy in a Bane mask running around, was there?
Probably was. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's true. That is true. I did see a guy in New York. Whoever did this was brilliant. A complete head to toe Spider-Man costume, full on cosplay, a great looking costume. And they were crawling, they were hanging off a wall at one of the bridges or something like that in New York. It was fabulous. It was whoever did that was just absolutely, God bless them. I love them for it. Yeah. So in the weeks since, I know on the news, everything was wall to wall coverage on that. Are people still pro? I know that a lot of the violence and a lot of the red hot anger has died down, but are they still gathering daily, or like what is the mood of the city?
Yeah, I think it's more in kind of a hopeful, a bit of a mood of repair in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Our governor's trying to get a lot of help for, the damages caused in a lot of businesses.
I think your governor's great. I
Um,
think your governor's great. By the way, I see her a
Yeah,
lot on the news. I think she's got her head pointed in the right direction.
and so I feel, hopeful that things will turn around in a positive way there. It seems like a lot of the shift is back to the COVID spike,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
really the big talking point again.
Which from one disaster to another, let's this is just happy good time field time, happy good time Joe on Joe today.
I
You,
know.
yeah, Matt, you are a fitness certification employee. Like you work with personal trainers and you get them certified
Yeah.
for fitness, right? And you also
Yep.
mentioned, yeah, you also mentioned your wife is a school teacher. Both of those
Sure.
both of those jobs are heavily impacted by COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so in a normal world, I was traveling kind of throughout the US, teaching a lot of these workshops and courses, a lot of time in the airports, but sometimes driving, depending on how close they were, but a lot of times the airports all over the US, normally meeting lots of people, interacting. So that's all kind of been shut down, doing some online stuff, but mostly just answering questions from home. Like we, recorded some videos and did some voiceover work, things like that, to
Oh, that's
try to
great.
make it as accessible for people as possible during this time, because not a lot of travel, and
Yeah,
in the fitness industry as a whole is pretty heavily
sure.
impacted.
Absolutely. It's got to be. So, well,
Um,
I hope that you guys are doing well cuz with your wife, I know that right now again as we record this, the big debate is whether or not schools are going to be opening.
yeah,
You know,
she is.
yeah.
Yeah,
What's the state of her schools? Like what grades? Like she teach grade school or high school or what does she teach?
yeah, yeah. She's teaches fifth and sixth grade
Oh, wow.
special education.
Oh, amazing.
So she teaches at a private school where it's all students with like learning challenges.
Well, God bless her for
And
that. That's
yeah,
fabulous. Yeah.
and
Has her school announced like what kind of COVID guidelines they're going to be opening with?
they're trying. They're still. She's on a task force, kind of volunteer one this summer, trying to figure out how they're going to open things back up in September. They're weighing kind of the different options right now. Will it still be, school from home? Will it be half and half, or half the time they're in school, or just half time they're teaching on Zoom like they did for the last, 3 months of the school year? Um, or, will it be fully back? Trying to adhere to all these different social distance guidelines
Sure.
and protection and
Well, you guys,
so forth.
I mean,
It's the big question, really.
yeah. Well, I love hearing that she's on the task force for it. That's great. Tell her thank you for being part of the solution. For real,
Certainly will.
mean it. And this is you guys are both literally on the front lines of everything happening in America right now. Like this, you couldn't
Right, right.
you couldn't be more relevant right now.
Right, and very thankful we're not out of work or anything like that. A lot of
Great.
other people have been affected so much more. So, grateful for that aspect.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And another thing you have your finger on the pulse of, Matt Anderson, is GI Joe. Let's be
Yes.
real. There's nothing that's coming up faster and more just in your face right now than GI Joe, and I'm of course I got my tongue in cheek, but I'm not even being hyperbolic with that. GI Joe is on.
Right.
We were at the comic shop yesterday, and we have multiple calls about GI Joe comics. Multiple people coming in the store asking about GI Joe stuff. We had people calling to see if we were carrying the GI Joe figures. I'm telling you, I can feel it in the air. GI Joe's going to have a great year.
That makes my heart so happy. That's what I say. It's a brand I've had, love for since I was probably about 5 years old.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Sure. So I'm sure I probably saw a few of the commercials on TV. Would probably been my first introduction, but I would have been around 5 years old. I remember when my parents got their first VCR. And,
Probably
back in the
cost
day,
them $700.
Probably, yeah. This is like, 80, late 84, 85, somewhere in that
Oh
time
yeah.
frame. I remember um, the first, it wasn't all the same day, but the first three VHS tapes my mom rented for, little 5-year-old me it was a two-parter He-Man tape, which had the first couple episodes. At that point, I was watching He-Man every afternoon.
Yeah.
That was my everything in my world at that point.
Love it.
So it was that. It was the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve
Yes.
because I was way into the superpowers action figures and watching the Super Friends cartoon as well. And then she said, "Oh, I think you might like this GI Joe thing," and it was the VHS, the very first miniseries, the kind of
Yeah.
real American hero, the mass device one, and instantly this show just blew me away, and in particular, the character of Duke just spoke to me like I was already a real big fan of Captain America. My parents got me a subscription to the Captain America comic book. And I think Duke, in a way, looked a lot like Steve Rogers without the costume, as
Absolutely did. Yeah.
and so I think right away I'm like, oh, I like this guy. He's the strong, yeah, kind of stand-up leader, but he sort of had this humorous side. I laughed as a kid, and he said he wants to kick the mustard out of that crazy hot dog, and stuff like that. And then I grew up in Iowa, a very small town in
Okay.
northeast Iowa. And one thing that really was cool to me as a kid was in that first miniseries, that's the scene where he's like in that back to tank, like Luke Skywalker from Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about his background. They said, as a young boy growing up in Iowa, I'm like, Duke's from Iowa? And then I was very confused when I got his action figure, and the file card said he was from St. Louis, Missouri. Cartoon didn't
once
follow
again,
that.
once again, St. Louis coming in and ruining everything. I'm just kidding. I'm just
Right.
kidding, St. Louis.
Yes. Yes. I grew up a big Cubs fan, so I
Oh,
was not a Cardinals fan.
hey, me too. Me too. That's why I take the shots at St. Louis that I do. Oh, that's great, man. That's great. And so the cartoons drew you in. Did you branch out into? Obviously, you must have branched out into the toys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember, like I said, that first miniseries, and then a few months later, my mom's like, "Hey, it's on TV every day," and that would probably been that first full season, in the fall of '85. So I was watching that every day, and then I'm like, I really want some of the figures. And I think it was my grandpa I sweet talked. My grandparents were fantastic to me. They got me a lot of the action figures and the toys. And I remember Flint was my first action figure. I couldn't find Duke right away, but Flint was there, and he was kind of my number two, Joe.
Oh,
So
Flint's a good one. That's
Flint started me off into
yeah.
quite the rabbit hole. And then probably close to around that time is when I started getting the comics as well. I was already getting comics at that time. My parents were always real good about that. Was one thing they were probably big on, I think, because even though I couldn't fully read them probably at that age yet, it really was kind of helped teach me a lot of words, and
Mm-hmm.
probably why I picked up reading pretty quickly. And it's that great visual too. So you
Yeah.
have the visual with the words, and I remember I'd look at these comics and go ask my parents what they meant, and GI Joe in particular, was really great for educating.
Yes. Larry wrote for a much higher level of reader than I think the age of us that were reading it at the time. He absolutely wrote up, and I think that's great. I think the best comic books do that.
Right. And I want to say that I think I would not have gotten this off the stand, so someone must have given me the copy. Maybe it was a friend of a friend or something. I want to say it was issue 37 with Flint was on it. Flint's debut, and he's like jumping off,
The
about to fight the Crimson
Yeah,
Twins.
jumping off the roller coaster.
Yes,
Yes, so good.
yeah. And then I think the first one I got off the newsstand or at the local pharmacy, I want to say it was 44, and it had Lady J on the cover, and she's being chased by a semi that has, I think it's a battle android troopers driving
Yes, and she's on a motorcycle. I think she was
it.
on the I think she was on a Silver Mirage, but she was definitely on a motorcycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what we just did without realizing it. Is exactly what something that we were talking about at the comic shop today, and I've said this before on the show. We just described some of our early comic experiences, and the stories that were in the comic corresponded to what was happening on the cover, and that's how our brains
Yes.
kind of connect to that. And
Right.
in general, I don't know how you feel on this, but I think that's a huge flaw with comic book covers today, that
Oh,
the
yes.
the majority of the covers, and certainly not all of them, some people are going to say like, well, whatever, Immortal Hulk usually does. Yeah, Immortal Hulk actually usually does correspond to what's happening inside, but the vast majority,
That's a good series.
yeah, the vast majority of covers don't tell a glimpse of the story that's happening in the book, and therefore there's a devaluation in the mind of the reader because they all blend in together. Like every cover is a group shot or or some kind of glamour pose by a painted artist that doesn't correspond
Right.
to the story. So and because the cover is the thing that we look at most of the time of any comic book, there's no mental connection. So as you get older, it all blends in together, and nothing really stands out.
Yeah.
And if I were in charge of any line of comic books, that would be the absolute first thing that I do, is make sure the covers, as best as possible, reflect what is happening inside the comic book, because that's the only way you're going to burn those memories into your readers.
I fully concur. I couldn't even tell you, I can't even think of a cover that stood out to me, much in recent times.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
I'm sure I look at them and like, wow, that looks good. And then I turn the page and into the story.
well, you remember in the 80s, when Marvel did that month, I think it was for the celebrating their 25th anniversary, and they did that month
Yes.
of headshots. And
Yes.
yeah, like there was a great Snake Eye. I forget what issue it was, but Snake Eyes had the headshot, and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, like Hordak was on the Masters of the Universe one.
yeah, and the framing of all the various Marvel characters around it. Like it was great. Like it was a
Yeah.
great promotion. But the reason those stood out so much and are so memorable is because they were unique. They were not, the same thing that's happening on every other cover that month or every other cover that week. So that's why it sticks in your head as such a great series of covers. It's like anything, when every week all the covers roughly look the same, just with different, this one has Green Lantern and this one has Flash, but it's the same type of cover. Nothing is unique. Everything is the same. Actually, I'll say this: Flash has been doing a great job with showing stuff that's going on. I don't know if you read Flash, but Flash has been pretty good lately, and their covers absolutely reflect the action that's happening.
Oh, that's a series actually I want to go back and get. I didn't start getting it at the beginning of Rebirth, and not, Joshua Williamson's kind of finished up his run, I
Mm-hmm.
know, and
It's
I'm gonna need
good.
to pick that
Yeah,
one up. I've heard it's really great.
Flash has really been solid. Yeah, they've really done a great job with it.
And I should take that back. I've gotten a couple issues because they crossed over, like the Button crossed over with Batman, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yep.
They pick up those issues.
I'm
And there was
excited.
one other Batman crossover too in there somewhere.
I'm excited about that Batman 3 Joker story. I'm curious to see how they wrap that up.
Yes.
That whole thing's been kind of a weird continuity mess, loose thread that is interesting to me. But let's wrap it up and move on.
I hear you. Yeah, wasn't that like in the New 52 Justice Leagues when that first got touched on?
Oh
I
yeah,
believe, right?
yeah. Batman sat in the Metron in the Mobius chair, and
Right.
that was 5 years ago.
I know.
Come on. So, but I think it'll be good. Yeah. So that's my comic diatribe for today. But G.I. Joe's on the cusp, man. G.I. Joe, as we're recording this, and this episode is dropping the week after that new Snake Eyes comic book dropped by Rob Liefeld.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I haven't read it. I hope that it's good.
Me too.
Hope in one hand, crap in the other. See which fills up first. However, I've got hopes for it. We'll leave it at that. I have not read it. I'm not going to judge it before I see it. I have hopes for it.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying both. I always will enjoy the Hama Joe series. It's
Yes.
still going on, and I've enjoyed the other current kind of the IDW continuity
Uh-huh.
one. Right, it's just sort of a different, sort of almost like an alternate universe kind of take
Oh, yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
But I enjoy it.
I
despite what happened in issue one, based on what I said my favorite character was.
oh that's oh did they kill off Flint in the first issue?
Duke, yeah.
Oh, Duke. Oh, right. Yeah, they totally did. You're right. I forgot about that. Well, I think that I absolutely let me go on record. I'm enjoying the heck out of the Paul Eller stuff. I
Yes,
think
Paul.
I think he's really talented. I love the Hama stuff, of course. I do think he's really talented. What sucks is that run has been just totally cut in half by these delays from the pandemic.
Right,
So,
yeah.
like it didn't get a chance to like burn into people, any readers, brains, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I hope that it survives that. I hope that it, I hope they give it as much of a leash as they can. Like, let's not make any rash decisions until well after the Snake Eyes movie comes out, assuming that comes out on time this year. Did that get delayed to next year? Or is that still on for this year?
I am not sure. Like, so much. I'm not sure what anything's coming out anymore. It seems like
Yeah,
so many dates have changed.
I don't,
Um,
I
I don't
don't.
even know when Wonder Woman's scheduled anymore at this point. I know it was pushed to August. I'm like, there's no way it's coming out at that point. And I think I'm sure it's been pushed back again. But
Well, the internet tells me that Snake Eyes is still scheduled for an October 23rd release date. So cross your fingers, everybody, and cross your swords, cross your fingers, and put the mute button on because it's Snake Eyes. Um, yeah, so I got a lot of hope for that movie, and they announced the video game. There was a listing.
Yes.
There was a listing on GameFly. Surprised that Joe on Joe broke the news about the GameFly release. Well, Matt, what is your connection to GI Joe Extreme?
Sure. I actually watched it when it first aired. I was in high school. Um, I know we exchanged some messages. I was telling you kind of how I found it. It was syndicated on my local Fox station
Uh huh.
out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The first season aired on Sunday mornings, kind of this little cartoon block with, the Marvel Action Hour stuff, the Iron Man, Fantastic Four. So I made a point to, try to watch it. It wasn't perfectly my cup of tea, but I was so happy just to have something G.I. Joe since it sort of been away for a few years. The comic was done at this point, the Marvel comic.
Uh huh.
And then I know I saw the second season as well. And that's around the time Beast Wars started, and they sort of aired in the same block of time, that power block that was mentioned a couple episodes ago, where
Mm-hmm.
Beast Wars was on a couple days and G.I. Joe Extreme was on a different day. So I made a point to watch it.
And
And
at the time, were you like were you confused? Was it throwing you off that it wasn't the real American Hero stuff? Like, did you warm up to any of these guys, or what was your? Do you recall at all like what your take on it was? Whether or not like you would, because there's a level of I love Iron Man. Like you mentioned the Iron Man TV show. I love Iron Man.
yeah,
I love Fantastic Four. The first two seasons of those cartoons were terrible. But
yes,
the second season, at least of the FF one, got a lot better. I think the Iron Man one did too, but the second one, FF,
yeah,
got better.
absolutely.
So I could appreciate like, oh wow, I love the FF, and I connect with those people. But man, that first season sucked. So was there any of that where you were like, I like this cartoon, but I like these, like I'm into the characters, or because it was just different in both directions, did it turn you off at all?
I think I was just so happy to have some form of GI Joe out there, but it wasn't the same, to me as a real American Hero, which I really had the connection with. And um, I always said in my mind, I almost viewed it like these characters are like my regular Joe characters. So like Lieutenant Stone very much felt like Duke to me,
Yeah.
or maybe Hawk or Flint. You could kind of roll all three of them into Stone, and like Mayday certainly had the Scarlet look with sort of the Lady J personality. Uh, so that's sort of, I guess, in how my mind I went to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, it's this future version. There's similar characters, but it's different. Um, yeah, I certainly thought it was at the time the worst of the GI Joe cartoons, and I admitted this to you yesterday. For years, I was like, that's probably the worst GI Joe is that GI Joe Extreme era. Again, even though I watched it because it was GI Joe, but boy, watching it recently, I turned a corner on the show quite a bit.
Yeah. And I think it's time to remind listeners that what Matt's talking about, this turning the corner on it, it's because when you watch it, really watch it now, with more mature eyes, you realize it's a good show. So remember, guys, we have the hashtag out there, hashtag release the extreme. It is out there, guys. So at Hasbro, hashtag release the extreme. So listeners, remember, when you're on the internet, you need to tag Hasbro, send them a Twitter note, send them an Instagram tag, hashtag release the extreme. We need to get this out there, guys. We get that trending. We get Hasbro eyeballs on this. They're going to know that we want to see Extreme in some form, streaming or on a Blu-ray. It doesn't matter. We're not demanding any specifics. We just would love to see this embraced. And if not embraced in any kind of reboot, just embraced as part of the history of G.I. Joe and make it aware, because there's some really cool stuff in this that absolutely could be pulled out and used in the modern stuff, and no one's going to know about it unless they see these episodes. So hashtag release the extreme. Matt, are you with us on this?
Absolutely.
Well, do your part, listeners. Do your part. Retweet. It should check my timeline on Twitter and stuff. It should be all over that. And let's put the pressure on Hasbro because they're not doing enough video games and action figures and movies, and now we need them to data mine 2 years of G.I. Joe obscurity. I love it. Well, Matt, today's episode is really, really cool. Like I said, it is called A Traitor Among Us. It's a really exciting episode, and it starts with a good recap. So we're going to get ready to watch the episode. Listeners, if you're able to find the episode, hashtag release the extreme, be ready to watch along with us. And while you're on the internet, spreading the good word of the hashtag release the extreme, I'm at Joe and Joe Pod on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And you can send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com if you, like Matt, want to be a guest on the show. I love having listeners on. It's my favorite part of the show. And guests not only get the actual episode to watch via bootleg link, but I've also got the entire library of it. And so, guests, you get access to all the G.I. Joe Extreme. So if you want to watch G.I. Joe Extreme, hit me up. That's the carrot, Matt. That's the carrot to get people to want to do this.
It is a fantastic carrot. I was so happy to get that link. I appreciate it when I got it. I'm like, it's so nice to have an easily accessible way to watch the show now.
Totally. Well, hashtag release the extreme. All right, listeners, get your episodes ready. We're going into A Traitor Among Us, Season 2, Episode 3. And here we go. So, I'm fairly positive that we are not going to see any more of the live action openings for this show. I'm pretty sure it doesn't seem like they did any of them for Season 2.
Yeah, and I can't recall if they ever did either. It's been quite a while since I watched it, but yeah. From what I've watched in Season 2, I haven't seen any.
Yeah, because we're also, so far, we don't have any of the PSAs on there as well. So it seems like the budget for PSAs and the budget for live action was cut, but the budget for Awesome was certainly not cut. And real quick, we're starting this episode starts with a recap. So if you're not like fully caught up on the show, listeners, and you're hearing this maybe episode for the first time and you haven't gone back and listened to all the Joe and Joes, this gives you a good recap of what happened at the end of the first season.
Free Clancy, who Ironclaw had taken hostage, and defeat Ironclaw once and for all.
So they're fighting. You get that little nice voiceover there, and basically what we see is a recap that Claw's believed dead, but he really replaced Clancy, which really comes into play in this episode. And there's this is also a little bit of that music video action montage stuff, but this is all recap, so it makes sense. Now, what do you think of the art style here, Matt?
That's actually something I was going to touch on. I feel like the second season, the animation got a little bit stronger.
I agree. I completely agree. It's the models got a little more, I don't know, detailed, but a little more, although what we're watching here, this is this is from the first season, but yeah, there was something different. There was just they changed the Eagle Eye Ballistic is now Eagle Eye, so that he literally had a model change, and it was I don't know what the difference was. I'm not an animation expert in that regard, but I definitely agree. It definitely looks better, and there's a different production. I think there was a new production company on this one too, a little bit. Seemed to be a new logo at the end.
Right.
This is new animation. This is new stuff. So we're seeing where Clancy's being held by that steel dragon, that awesome looking steel dragon lady. It's got a lightsaber. What is that all about? Now, were you familiar with her? Were you familiar with her at all?
I have vague memories of her from when I watched it, but I think she's a pretty cool character.
She's awesome. I would love to see them bring her back more, you know?
I really thought the Scar characters as a whole were pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They each have pretty interesting personalities and character traits.
Yeah. They absolutely would fit in the world of Joe and Cobra, you know?
Right.
And really, like, let's look. So, like, let's go down like Inferno. Let's just focus on him being the fire guy instead of also being like the toy master guy.
Right.
But just being a fire guy, Cobra only had they had like the heat vipers, right? But they never had a specific person who was a fire person. So they could but Firefly wasn't. You know what I mean? He was more like Demolitions. His name was Firefly, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like a straight up like barbecue guy or Charbroil. Because Charbroil was a Joe, right?
Correct. And some blowtorch.
Yeah.
I guess torch in a little bit of a way.
I guess. But
not to that level.
Right. So you bring Inferno in. He's a flamethrower guy.
I can't find a computer file of the
Rampage. Real quick. Metalhead is very upset because there's a file that got deleted from his computer. So he just threw a bunch of fast food. That's how upset he was.
And he probably had the munchies in his hungry.
Oh, he completely had the munchies. But he's really upset about this. And I love that this red guy who was the caretaker for their new base, which their new base is like it's like the weapons training ground. He's this guy that looks like Hank McCoy. He's like a major character in this episode, and I love it.
Yeah.
He's never going to get an action figure, but he's a main character in it.
Right. I kind of thought he had the Hank McCoy look, and then he had the Banshee dialogue, called everyone boy.
Yeah, totally Irish. Yeah. He's a huge. His name's Red too. Like.
Right.
Listen, Joe's never met a stereotype that they didn't like. So Clancy, quote unquote Clancy, and Stone are meeting with the president, and he wants to send him on a mission to take out Scar, and Ironclaw / Clancy is really trying to talk them all off the ledge here. So this is cool, and what I really dig is that this episode itself does a lot of does dual storytelling, and look how impatient Clancy is.
So unexpected. I can say that again.
And Stone starts to suspect that Clancy may not be exactly who he thinks he is.
We have to provide reliable security to bring him in. I thought your team... No! I mean, this informant is so vulnerable to any Scar attack. We must ensure there are absolutely no leaks. Stone and I should be the only ones privy to this information. And we should personally meet him and escort him to a safe house where he can be immediately debriefed. Splendid idea.
So,
the best there is.
Clancy is oh, that's great. The president's like, there's no one I trust more than you, Clancy. So Clancy and Stone are going to go on this mission together.
And you can just see Stone looking like something's up here.
Yeah, he doesn't trust him, and it's great. And I think like if we think about it, so this season is 13 episodes. This is basically about a quarter of the way through.
Right.
And it makes sense that like now at this point in the storytelling that someone would start to suspect that Clancy's, not Clancy, And when I first watched this, I was afraid that this was going to be the end of that subplot. You know, like they were going to reveal him in this episode, right?
Right. That's why I was thinking.
Yeah,
too.
and spoiler alert, that doesn't happen. And I was so happy to see that.
It's unfortunate he is so loyal to our enemies.
He's got although a drawing of Ironclaw, it looks like he has a organ on his mouth.
Yeah.
You know, like a pipe
It's such
organ.
a big thing.
Yeah. He's
Not quite as Vader-esque there.
yeah, he's playing at the local church later. Sunday services.
It reminds me of. Do you remember the Filmation Ghostbusters cartoon from the 80s where it was not like, the movie Ghostbusters? but
The
it was-
ones with the gorillas?
Yeah, and the bad guy always played his organ. That's what I thought of right there. He kind of had a similar look. It's like primeval or something.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I do remember the gorilla, which was based on the live action show from the 70s, the Ghostbusters.
Right.
Did you ever see that one? That show's crazy. Oh my God. Listeners, if you've never seen that, seek it out because it's crazy. It is about two dudes. And I know the actors, but I forget who they were.
I can't remember either.
And they were it's kind of just like the movie. They weren't capturing ghosts or anything, but they were busting ghosts. You know, it was like Scooby-Doo kind of busting ghosts. And a giant person in a gorilla suit. Literally, that was the adventure. It was a live action person in a gorilla suit busting ghosts.
And I think the cartoon was supposed to be like their kids or something.
Well, the cartoon, I believe, was the reason the Ghostbusters had to call them the real Ghostbusters was because that the TV show still had the copyright on it. There were copyright issues around it. So whoever did the animated version of the Gorilla Show, they basically said, we can absolutely sell the show, get all the PR from the huge hit that was the movie Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? And just make whatever kind of show we want to make because we can legally call it Ghostbusters and kids will absolutely watch it. And they probably made a ton of money, even though the show was terrible, because it had the name Ghostbusters.
I watched it.
completely, man. And I think I've read a little bit about. I mean, I know I've read about that, but I think I've read specifically where the movie name Ghostbusters, they were having naming troubles almost all the way up to like final production.
Right.
And I think it must be that they got it ironed out to use it if they gave like TV rights or something or toy rights. You know what I mean? Because the toys were called real Ghostbusters too.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
A few of them.
Because that's crazy. And wow. So there's a lot going on here. Sergeant Savage and Metalhead are getting in a fight because Sergeant Savage believes Metalhead is the traitor. And Sergeant Savage, we're going to commercial. We'll be right back. There's a lot happening here. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Sergeant Savage is beating the piss out of Metalhead because he absolutely believes he's the traitor. And Metalhead doesn't like Savage. Savage doesn't like Metal. Here's what I like about this confrontation they got going on. Metalhead is absolutely the representation of the modern kid, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, he's like, hey, dude, you know, that's 100% Metalhead.
Chill out, man.
Yeah, chill out, man. And Savage, as we know, is a World War II generational veteran, literally. So it works 100% in character that those two wouldn't necessarily get along really well.
Well, Joe, I just kind of thought of this. It's sort of like this was the prequel to Marvel Civil War. Metalhead's kind of a Tony Stark genius
Yeah,
type, and Savage is Captain America.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So while they were fighting, though, there's an attack on the base. So Scar is attacking this, and this is, remember, this is the new G.I. Joe base. This is the like the tech development center that Red runs, and
Right.
Savage is straight up about to murder Metalhead here. He is convinced that Metalhead is the one who sold them out, but the three of them are trapped. It's basically, think of like in the pit, those early episodes in the comics where there was the assault on the pit and the guy got trapped in the basement. Do you remember that, Matt?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and they had to like fight their way up to literally escape the pit. And eventually, when the pit finally did collapse, like Cobra Commander literally was trapped under there. In the earlier episode when it happened, that's when we lost General Flag,
Yep.
or Admiral Flag, Admiral Flag, yeah. And that's kind of what's happening here. They're in this base, it's getting attacked, and if they don't get out, they're all gonna die. So instead of beating up Metalhead, this is great.
Yes, this is my favorite part.
Here we go.
The real Clancy never takes off his shade. You tell me where he is.
I love it. I love it. Lieutenant Stone just used the "you wear your glasses too much" argument to call him a traitor. But no, it's good because this is the clue from the end of the first season that he remembers.
Right.
Stone finally remembers, oh, wait a minute, I stepped on your glasses. When I first saw you, you had your glasses on. And then they were in the Oval Office earlier, and he took his glasses off. And Stone, his Clancy never takes his glasses off. So now they're at this carnival where they were supposed to do, you know, this rendezvous mission. And he's half claw. Well, now he's full Iron Claw, but he was half claw. He was half claw, half Clancy. And he's hunting down Lieutenant Stone, and it's great.
I just love how Stone just like calls him out. He knew it, and he's just.
Yep. And
this kind of ties to the Joe comics too. Where they're at Coney Island.
very
I
much
believe.
so. With the comic you were talking about earlier with Flint and the Crimson Twins.
Right.
I think carnivals are such a great setting for action scenes. You know,
Right. I remember. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. You've got, you know, there's lots of bright lights, lots of distractions. Machines get turned on. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's always carnivals. Literally are dangerous to begin with. People die at carnivals all the time. So now mix in, you know, oh, that's great. His head's getting wrapped. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's great. So yeah, I love when a good fight scene happens at a carnival. Oh my God. I finally watched, and so I said good fight scene, so this wasn't a good one, but I finally watched the movie Catwoman, Matt.
Oh, I've still never seen the whole thing.
This is what COVID is doing to me. This is what the lockdown, I finally was like, you know what? I'll watch Catwoman. Wow, is it terrible. But there was a carnival scene. They got stuck on a Ferris wheel, and she like used her cat-like powers to save people. You know, like Ferris wheels are like the most dangerous ride ever invented.
That's for sure.
Oh, and here comes the cyclone with, of course, Ironclaw riding it. So we're going to commercial. We'll be right back. Today's file card feature is on the Scar Bone Splitter tank. It's the armored vehicle that they use quite a bit on this show. It's a 4-wheel drive vehicle with a cockpit for a pilot in the front. It's got a giant phallic missile launcher on the back, and in the back there's a peg for you to put another member of Scar, as well as a machine gun on the front right of the vehicle. The color scheme is green and orange, and the coolest thing about this is the missile is launchable, guys. It is made out of soft foam with a hard plastic tip. I believe they call it the Ultra Slam firepower. And let's not overlook the fact that on the front of it, there are dual chainsaws. That's right, not one chainsaw, 2 chainsaws. That's really great. And there's battle damage armor that breaks away when they're under heavy attack. It came with 2 flag points, and when you push down quickly on the missile launcher chassis part, that's when the soft foam missile fired. I like it. I think it works well on the show. I think it looks pretty good as a toy. It's got a big antenna in the back as well. The wheels are studded. Think of the APC's wheels where they got those neat grooves in them. I'm a fan. I dig it. So Bone Splitter, the armored tank for Scar, we salute you. I feel like that was a really quick commercial break. Like that segment of the show, you know? There was a lot going on in the first act. Second act was really quick, and now we just get stone versus claw action. Are you much of a carnival like amusement park rider, Matt?
Not huge. Like, as a kid, I certainly like to go to it, but not as much in recent years.
I get motion sickness now. I never did when I was a kid.
That's me too. Like, I remember being on Tilt-A-Whirl a few years back. I'm like, whoa.
Terrible.
I used to love this as a kid.
Yeah.
Man.
Terrible motion sickness now. I can't go without one of those patches or or something.
It's terrible to get old, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's fun though. I love going on roller coasters. I always have, but as I got older, in my mid-30s, all of a sudden, I started literally vomiting. I'm like, what is happening? I'm not even drinking. I'm just on a regular roller coaster, and I just wanted to throw up. So now I have to, when I go, oh man, that's a good spill. But we don't know who punched who. Did you catch that?
Right.
Because
mystery.
Because it was great. The animation guys, both Claw and Stone, were wearing these trench coats, and it was a foggy night. So as they're fighting on top of the Ferris wheel, one punched the other and knocked him off. And now the trench coat is meeting up with the informant that they were there to meet. And we still don't know which one of our G.I. Joe guys, whether it's Stone or Clancy/Claw, we don't know which one's meeting this informant. And this guy is an actual government informant, that he's actually here to spill secrets on how Scar is infiltrating the base. And meanwhile, back at the base, Scar is just doing a full-on assault on the base. It's like an assault on the pit. It's really cool. And Stone is just not stopping threatening Metalhead.
I know. It's like, guys, there's something bigger going on here.
Yeah, it's either that or he's giving him a deep tissue massage.
Yeah, that's actually what
because it kind of looks like a deep tissue massage.
Your neck's a little tight, sitting at the computer all the time.
Yeah. I mean, you're all this computer tension, Metalhead. You got to let it out somehow. Here. I was on when I was a kid. It's a carnival story. We were at Great America, and so you're in Minneapolis, Great America in Illinois. You ever been there?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we used to go there all the time when we were kids, and we were on the Eagle, that big wooden one, and it was me and a bunch of my cousins, and I was the youngest, so I had some older teenage cousins. They were with us, and someone way up, not one of my family members, but someone stranger way up in the front of the car as we were going down the first big Eagle drop, and this is mid-'80s, right? Held up a can of shaving cream and just squirted it. And so everyone on the rest of the car got hit with we all got hit with shaving cream. It was pretty funny. But God bless my cousins who were, probably 16, 17 at the time. When we pulled in, we were all covered. Everyone saw immediately that something was wrong, right? We were all covered in shaving cream. And the two dudes who did it, they jumped off and started to run off the platform because I knew my cousins jumped out of that ride and beat the shit. It just started to beat these guys up. I think my cousins might have gotten kicked out that day, but I feel like memory serves. I think the answer, they didn't. I think at first security was like, "You're all gone," and they were like, "No, these guys, Oh, but wait, we just missed some good stuff. I just talked about a violent episode from my path. past. We just basically we learned that it was Scar who won on the roller coaster. He beat up Stone, and he brought that traitor to this cabal of other people who have infiltrated the government. So it's not just Scar. This is like that cadre of like the deep staters here that are, working against the government. And we find out that
What's the matter with you?
he basically handed over the traitor to him, so Scar is still winning.
Well, I thought there was a big kind of nice reveal in this episode too, where they talked about Iron Claw is just a portion of, he heads
Yes.
the military branch, but we have these other branches of Scar, that
It's so good. And that actually plays off a lot of stuff that's in the comic book too. In the comic book, he was a smaller part of a larger organization. They didn't touch on that a lot in the first season of this, so that they're bringing that in. I don't know if it was hand in hand or at what point in the creation process of it, but it was great. So now Clancy, quote Clancy, is back to the president, and they're saying that
Stone sacrificed himself trying to save me. You tried your best, Clancy.
that's great.
It's a great loss.
and now he knows the tidbit not to mess with his glasses.
Yes, that's great. So this is what I was saying earlier, how I love that, like, it's so Stone is totally, he's in a hospital. He's not dead, but he's in a hospital. And Metalhead and Red and Savage come to see him, and he's basically unconscious in a coma, probably. Oh, is he gonna whisper something? Oh, that's so good. Yeah, so that's it. So what they did is they, again, my worry was that they were going to reveal the whole thing to everybody, but it's not. They just, you know what I mean? Like, they just tease it out. So Stone knows it, but Stone's in a coma. So now Clancy can still do his evil bidding. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
It's so good.
It lets us know even more as the viewer. It gets kind of pulls you in that much more.
It's so good. It's so good. So Matt, we love on this show, I love to get my guests some code names. So if you could be a member of the Joe team, the Cobra team, the Extreme team, or Scar, what would you be? Or Dreadnought, or Crimson, Destro's Iron Grenadier, something like whatever you want to be. You tell me, what would you want to be? What would your specialty be? And then what would your code name be?
Sure. So I'd been thinking about this, obviously listening to podcasts for a few years, and I think I'd go on the Cobra side.
Oh, that's exciting.
Be evil here. And be maybe like one of their leader, kind of field commander types, sort of like the anti-Duke.
Okay.
Since Duke's my favorite character, I can't be him, and they already have Duke on the Joe team, so I'll be the Cobra equivalent, I guess. And so my backstory, I thought, was I actually was in the military unit. You know how in the comics, like Duke and Roadblock came in together?
Yeah.
And then when Flint comes in, he's kind of was part of Duke's unit too. It's sort of revealed.
He was, yeah.
So I was part of that unit too, but
Ooh.
I didn't get recruited to G.I. Joe. So I became bitter and angry and grew to hate him. And, that propaganda machine that's Cobra pulled me in.
I love it. That's great. That's great. So what do you think? What do you think for your code name?
So that's what I was going to ask you. So, Cobra, they love their anagrams,
Mhm.
Arbco and Braca and things like that. So of maybe some type of anagram of Duke, I thought would be kind of a cool opposing name.
How about
Jack or
how about
something.
this? How about this? I was thinking the same thing too when you said that. And then I know that there's a Marvel guy named this. So, but you know what? Guess what? We're not making toys and we're not making comics with this. This is just how about Nuke? How about Nuke?
Oh, yes. That's very fitting because of, yeah.
Does that work for you? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know the Marvel villain I'm thinking of, right?
Yeah, he's got the flag on.
Yeah. So I feel I'm not super happy with that because I feel like that's a little derivative. But the anti-Duke feels like it should be, who are you? I'm Nuke.
Right, exactly. And, it's that fake guise of he believes he's patriotic, but he's too extreme. And obviously I've become too extreme if I've joined Cobra.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? We're doing it. You're going to be Nuke. Is that good?
I like it.
All right. Now, if I get a call from a copyright lawyer, I'm just going to give them your information.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, hey, Nuke, welcome to Joe on Joe. Welcome to the Joe on Joe team, my friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Or actually, no, you're Cobra. Wait, welcome to Cobra. What am I talking about, Nuke?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, welcome to the Cobra team. Yes. I loved it, Matt. I loved having you on today. What'd you think of the episode?
I thought it was great. I really liked kind of the plot advancement of the whole story, and it's kind of used a small cast compared to some of the episodes.
Very much so.
Pulled me in.
And very personal stories too, and both plot lines. Usually, you'll get a plot line that's personal, and then a plot line that's bigger. And they absolutely found a way to make the assault on the pit, or whatever they're calling it. It's not the pit, but whatever that is. They made a way to make that a very personal fight between Metalhead and Sergeant Savage, which is great.
Right. Well, and I thought the plots ran concurrently. Like they fit well, because it's the one blaming the other's traitor is clearly not, when we're actually dealing with the real traitor.
Yeah.
The other side of it. So
now the question is, especially because Stone is, in our listeners, I watch these I watch these as we go. I've not watched ahead because I want to be as fresh as possible. So as we go along, I mean, Stone is the main character of the team, right? He is the lead of the show. He's the Duke of the show. How long is he going to be in the coma? Because as soon as I wonder if when he comes out, is he going to have, quote, amnesia?
Oh, good point.
How great is that going to be? Oh, I'm excited. Well, you know what, listeners? You can find out yourself if Hasbro hashtag release the extreme. Okay? If we get Hasbro to hashtag release the extreme, maybe you guys could watch ahead and find out too, so you don't have to wait for my episodes to drop to find out what happened 25 years ago. So remember, when you're out there on social media, guys, hashtag release the extreme. Get it out there. Matt Anderson, Nuke, the Cobra Field Commander, thank you so much for being a guest on Joe on Joe.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.
It's a lot of fun. It's really nice to meet you. And more so, let me say thank you so much for being a patron of this show, guys. You can go to patreon.com/Joe on Joe and support the show. We've got multiple tiers of support. You get access to the entire library of Joe on Joe Illustrated, which I need to start up soon and get those going again. I've also got some very cool things in the hopper, hopefully in August, that I'll be able to share with the patrons. And it's just a way to help keep the lights on here at Joe on Joe. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Matt, thank you so much for your support over the months and years. And listeners, we'll see you next time. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle. Extreme!